angels, it's Hailey Reese, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am truly so grateful that you are here, and I do hope that you are having an absolutely fantastic, beautiful, wonderful, all the good things, morning, afternoon, or night, whatever it is for you when this video finally reaches you. Today's video is one that I am super excited to dive head on with you guys into, and I'm sure it's one that most of you are really excited to see here as well, because we are diving into yet another true black-eyed children encounter. Now, if you have been on my channel, you guys would know that very few things while researching have completely and utterly terrified me. And black-eyed children are among the few that have. There's just something about these kids. Perhaps it's the fact that kids are meant to be innocent, or the fact that you would feel a great deal of pressure to say yes to a child in need. But something about these black-eyed children, y'all, it gets me every time. Now that's saying a lot, so I'm very curious to see where this experience ranks for you guys. But either way, for me, it's enough to keep me up at night. Oh, black-eyed children. Paranormal entities, beings, creatures, demons, what exactly they are, nobody knows. But essentially, they're children, at times even presenting as teenagers, who arrive on your doorsteps, the outside of your car, or on the side of the road, and they ask you, "Can we come in?" Now, you are absolutely never supposed to let a black-eyed child in. It is one of the worst things that you could possibly do. But in some situations, it's not so clear-cut. I mean, what are you supposed to do when a child shows up in need on your doorstep? Turn them away because of the color of their eyes? It becomes a little bit blurry. And today's experience is an unfortunate circumstance where those lines blurred and the unimaginable happened. So with that being said, sit back, relax, maybe turn a light on, because we're getting into the black-eyed children, and it's gonna be dark. So this experience begins with Nadine and Nathan. Now, the two of them have been together for a super long time and describe their love as love at first sight. The moment that they locked eyes in the grocery store, it was just a complete definition of love at first sight, and the two of them have been inseparable ever since. Now, Nadine works in real estate and is absolutely passionate about delivering her clients the best results and the best properties. And sometimes this requires her to work extra hours and extra late at night. But this worked out well for Nadine and Nathan, and always has, because Nathan also works pretty late at night and long hours. And the two of them just have always had this beautiful balance of work and personal life. Now, one of Nadine's biggest clients at the time of this encounter was a woman who invested in property, specifically sitting on valuable farmland. Now, her ultimate goal in this was to purchase properties with this vital, incredible land that farmers would need, and then therefore rent the properties with the farmhouses and the land to farmers and allow them to harvest crops on the property that they are renting. And this has always done really well for her. So Nadine and her worked hand in hand in finding these farmlands and then having her find people to rent the farmland. But things seem to be taking a turn for this client, because one property seemingly had some problems. You see, this property was beautiful. It was situated on gorgeous land with beautiful crops and forestry around it. There was a creek not too far, and the privacy. There was no neighbors. Beyond that, the home itself had been recently renovated, so it was like a dream come true. So Nadine couldn't figure out why her client was having such a hard time keeping anybody in the property. It was becoming such a headache that her client decided to sell, and Nadine went with her to go and get the pictures ready and everything ready for listing her property. Now, as Nadine arrived, Nadine remembered feeling immediately drawn to the forestry surrounding the land and the home itself. The minute that she went there, she felt like this was where she needed to be. But this wasn't really an option for Nadine and Nathan. They were not going to be buying the property because they were actually in an in-between of homes right now, waiting for their dream home that they had had being built to be completed. And it was set to be completed in around 8 to 9 months of this given point in time. And so buying another property to live in just really was not an option when they were in the home stretch of completing their absolute dream project. Nadine begins telling her client this and saying, oh my goodness, this place is perfect. I don't understand why nobody wants to live here, why everybody's leaving within a couple of weeks of living here. And she's just looking around in awe. And that's when the idea somehow or another comes to the forefront of Nadine and Nathan renting the space for dirt cheap as they sell the property, as they're on an in-between anyways. So they figured for the next couple of months, the next 8 or 9 months, they could just live in the property that, her client would give her cheap rent, and they could live there until their home was ready. And in turn, Nadine could sell the home for her at the end of it all. And this just seemed like a perfect plan. Like, the plan couldn't be any better for Nadine and Nathan. So they decide they're going to move in to this gorgeous farmhouse. And one thing I really want to drive home with emphasis here is that this property was rural. And when we look at black-eyed children, the most common sightings happen on country back roads, homes in the middle of nowhere, dark, deserted trails, abandoned parking lots. So I think we can understand where the little pieces of this puzzle are lining up. But for the first couple of months, Nadine and Nathan felt like it was normal. I mean, they'd never lived in an older home, and despite being renovated, they were warned that the home still settled the way that an older home did, and that there were going to be some noises and some, animals outside the property that they may or may not hear. But overall, everything seemed fine. And it was just that. Nadine would notice little cold chills throughout the home, or strange little footstep sounds, or even like banging on walls. But all of this just felt like an old farmhouse that was settling. And they decided that everything was perfectly fine. Famous last words, right? God. At this point in time, Nathan was working extra hours. The holidays were approaching, and Nathan was putting in pretty much as much overtime as he possibly could. And so Nadine was spending a lot more time alone in the house. And that was when one night, Nadine would hear what sounded like little taps outside the kitchen window as she was doing dishes. She said it started as a light little tap, and then it almost sounded like an intentional tap. And when Nadine would look up and out into the distance, she would see 2 little children staring straight towards her. Nadine described them as having pitch black, dark eyes, no detail in them, feeling as though they could burn holes straight through you from the way they looked deep into your soul. Their eyes felt lifeless, but intentional. Immediate chills shot through Nadine's body, and while they looked like children standing out there in the middle of the property, they didn't feel so innocent. Something felt off. But Nadine's instincts kicked in, and next thing she knew, she was running outside of the farmhouse to catch up to the children. And that was when she noticed the children weren't there. Now, the distance between where she'd seen the children and the horizon of where the forestry started was enough of a distance that no child could run it quick enough without being seen trailing off into the forest. So it made no sense to Nadine as to where they'd went. She actually believed that perhaps she was hallucinating and went back inside to enjoy the rest of her evening. But soon these sightings would happen more and more often, and in the glow of the porch light, she would see these two little kids just staring at her. Now, at first, she tried to tell Nathan about the kids in the field, but Nathan kind of looked at her like she was a little bit crazy. You see, Nadine had struggled with fertility, and every now and then, the same creeping, horrible thoughts would come into her mind, and children would become almost a haunting feeling to her, is how she described it. It was almost haunting. And so Nathan looked at this as another instance where children were causing her a great deal of stress, and she noticed the worry in his eyes. So she stopped talking to Nathan about the kids, but she was certain that she wasn't hallucinating, even more so when the family dog would start to acknowledge the children, growling and drawing attention towards the windows that they were standing outside of. Now, she described it as the children standing halfway through between her house and the forestry. They never came quite close enough, but what was eerie is even though she never saw them too close, she started to hear them whispering her name and calling out to her. And at this point, she starts to believe that these kids are finding a great deal of excitement making their way to her property every day and messing with her. But again, there was something in the way that those children looked at her that didn't seem right. And things would only take a darker turn when Nathan would start behaving weird around the home. Nathan's sleep patterns just went completely downhill, and in the night, she'd awake to find him sleepwalking throughout various spaces of the house. At times, she would catch him just staring out the window in a daze towards the forest. Other times, she would catch him opening the front door and staring out into the yard. But in the morning, Nathan would remember nothing of this. As Nathan is acting stranger, these black-eyed children are getting closer, and Nadine describes their voices as getting stronger. She starts to feel as though something isn't quite right and feels like she needs to distract herself. So one afternoon, Nadine decides to call Nathan and ask him where he put her sewing stuff, because again, they had just moved in. Nathan proceeds to tell her that he's not quite sure, but that the box of miscellaneous things was placed up in the attic. So Nadine decides to go up to the attic and take a look and see where her sewing stuff is. And that was when she discovers, carved into the attic walls, a letter stating to beware of the black-eyed children, to not answer their calls, to never let them in, for that's the start of the end. And again, this is carved into the walls of upstairs. Immediately, she starts to feel very strange because while Nathan had been up there, she'd only told him about the children once. But certainly, the children she was seeing had what appeared to be jet black eyes, even from the distance at which she was seeing them. They still seemingly had these pitch black eyes. Something was not right. And so the nights continue and Nathan's sleepwalking continues, and Nathan starts to even distance himself strangely from her, even pulling back from work. But one night things would take a horrifying turn, and the idea that something weird was happening would turn into a complete and utter nightmare becoming before Nadine's eyes. One night, in the middle of the night, Nadine would awake to whispering, scratching, and crawling in the room. Now, immediately, her thought was that it was Nathan, sleepwalking once again, acting strange. This had been going on for months now. But as she sat up and looked to the floor, crawling towards her, she sees one of the black-eyed children in her home. She sits up out of bed, goes running downstairs and immediately notices Nathan with the front door open, standing on the porch, staring out in a trance to the forest. Nadine shakes Nathan back to reality, to which he's dazed and confused, and tells him that there is a child with blacked out eyes in their bedroom. Now, Nathan is still completely distraught, and as they walk back to the room, she says she sees the child outside the window of their bedroom that is now pushed open, slowly walking away, and that Nathan just climbs back into bed and goes to sleep. So at this point, Nadine grabs her cell phone, and she is just racking her brain as to what the hell is going on here, and she begins to Google black-eyed children, and that's when she's met with the Wikipedia taking her down the wormhole of black-eyed children. Terrified at what she learned, she knew she hadn't let the children in, but she was certain that perhaps Nate had, because he'd had the door open when the child had come inside. But things would take an even darker turn. The next day, when she would finally bring it up to Nathan in a casual way and explain to him everything that happened, he told her that that was really weird. 2 little children had knocked on the door. He said the 2 children had jet black eyes and pale skin that sent chills through his body. He said that he realized that those must have been the children that Nadine had been seeing, because they matched the description that she'd told him the one time. And so when the children said that they needed to come inside and could they please come in, he said he looked along the property and realized how alone they were. He didn't want to let the children in, but at the same time, I mean, what are you supposed to do? And that was when, to Nadine's horror, she learned that he had let the black-eyed children in. And even creepier, he had let them in prior to his strange nightly sleepwalking and behaviors. Nadine said things only took a darker turn from there. And that's where she's at now. She has no idea what could come of the future, what's going to happen to Nathan. She said that she still hears the children's whispers out the windows in the night. She still sees them outside, but they haven't come back in yet. She said Nathan still sleepwalks, and now he even talks in his sleep, even sometimes in a language she can't understand. But now she thinks she knows why people left the property so much. It seems as though the property has a little secret, and 2 black-eyed children attached. Who carved the warning in the attic, and what happened after they let the children in? That's Nadine's biggest question. But basically, that is it for today's black-eyed children experience. And I am so curious to know what you guys think. So make sure to comment down below. If you guys are new to my channel, or you are just not yet subscribed but you do enjoy my content, I would absolutely love it more than you would ever know if you would go ahead and click that subscribe button, and please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness, and until tomorrow, I love you. Bye guys.